After 80 years, we can look back and reflect on what those who landed at the beach of Normandy knew as they stepped out onto the cold waters of the sea. But we can also know what those who lost their lives that day would never come to know. We know that those who died as liberators would set a path for freedom that would ring far beyond the province of France. And we know that after the day of struggle, Allied forces took the beaches of Normandy. We know that 45 days after D-Day, Allied troops secured Caen, their mission objective. We know that 47 days after D-Day, Soviet forces would liberate Maginot concentration camp. We know that 235 days after D-Day, the Soviets would liberate Auschwitz camp and bring to light the scale of industrial execution and horror the Nazis had inflicted on Jewish people and many others that they claimed as victims. We know that on 302 days after D-Day, U.S. troops liberated their first concentration camp near Ohrdruf and Thuringia. That 330 days after D-Day, Berlin would fall to Allied forces. And that 365 days after D-Day, the German Reich would surrender unconditionally, ending the war in Europe. And that 453 days after D-Day, the Empire of Japan would surrender unconditionally, ending the Second World War.
But it's important that we remember that 100 years ago, the reasons for the necessity of the invasion were already at work. A man had been lying to and whipping up the German people, manipulating the press, encouraging the formation of a private army. He had cheated democratic institutions, and he had installed himself in power with a vision for his nation's greatness that was based in resentment, violence, and retribution. He called for the elimination of the enemies of the people. He spoke about poisoning of his country's blood and the need to save the nation and return it to its purity. He dismantled the rule of law. He replaced it with loyalty to himself. The German people went along with him, and one of the most oppressive and undemocratic regimes ever to exist was the result. It became a threat to all of humanity. Thank God, some people would say, or thank human decency, that so many people and countries eventually stood up to this monster and ultimately defeated it.
Indeed, on this day, we remember the thousands who faced overwhelming odds, many of whom gave their lives in the pursuit of our freedoms and peace. Their heroic actions changed the course of history forever, and we are forever indebted to them. We reflect on that sacrifice and renew our commitment to the values they fought for, to protect. We owe it to them to ensure that the lessons of D-Day continue to inspire our future generations. And today we salute our heroes.
We are truly indebted to those men and women who fought at Normandy and throughout Europe for what they did for the world and for us. I hope we will never forget that we cannot afford to allow people who espouse and promote a worldview of divisiveness and resentment to take power away from those who believe in democratic institutions and to trample on respect for the law. World War II and Operation Overlord must be a lesson that we do not allow ourselves to forget. I am therefore thankful for this ceremony and to all of you who have come to witness it and to pay tribute to the meaning of D-Day.
But this alone is not the full story of those who served and died on D-Day. Beyond the war and the sacrifices still give us hope and teach lessons that we are well served to remember. The hate that they fought that day, sometimes we find ourselves still fighting today. But we are encouraged by those soldiers who stepped on those cold waters and onto the Normandy beach to continue to lift up our voices and to fight. We must remember those who sacrificed their lives and fought on that beach in Normandy, and we must reflect on their courage to stand up against evil. Thank you, Mr. Potts. And we must carry on their legacy to safeguard democracy and freedom against those who would seek to persecute and divide us. And so today we say thank you. We continue to honor their memory, and we continue to push for freedom and democracy.